Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Warrior. Coming up tonight, the man accused of murdering Zara Alina appeared in court today as her family speak out about the kind and independent 35-year-old who loved walking around her community in East London. Rugby World Cup winner Lawrence Dallaglio has walked 18 miles along the River Thames to raise money for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution after losing his sister over 30 years ago in the Marchioness disaster. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. Plus, if she can help celebrities, she can help you. Celebs Go dating agent Anna Williamson gives us her tips and tricks when it comes to money and love. And a new thriller about life after war begins on stage in North London this evening. We'll be hearing from the cast of 9 Circles as it opens at the Park Theatre. First tonight, though, a man accused of murdering Zara Alina in a street attack in East London has appeared today at the Old Bailey. 35-year-old Alina was walking in Cranbrook Road in Ilford, near where she lived, when she was attacked in the early hours of Sunday. A post-mortem examination revealed she had multiple serious injuries. Well, Jordan McSweeney from Dagenham did not enter a plea to the charge of murder in court today. He is also charged with attempted penetration without consent and robbery. Zara Alina's family said the aspiring solicitor was at a point in her life where her joy was radiating and blossoming. Alina's aunt, Farah Naz, spoke today, remembering her independent and kind niece, saying that she felt safe in Ilford and often walked around the community with her mother.
They would walk through Valentine's Park. They would walk up Cranbrook Road. That was their road to keep fit. It was well lit, and that's where they walked. And also because she knows those streets. It's a home. She knows the entire community between these 2 houses, the whole area. She sees that as her home. She knew everybody. If you're walking through your home, you are not going to expect to be hurt, to be brutalized, are you? Because she knew everybody. The hundreds of people that have come to our house, that have called us, that have sent us letters saying, you don't know me, but we knew Zara. You don't know me, we knew Zara. We had so many conversations. She was kind, and I'm going to say dutiful, but that didn't make her, that didn't restrict the fact that she was fierce as well. She would speak up. If she didn't agree with you, she would say it. She wasn't afraid. And that's how perhaps she differed to the rest of us. She had that independent spirit, physically, emotionally, intellectually. She didn't care who you were. And my brother used to say to her, you know, the way that we talk to people, the way that we conduct ourselves, you conduct yourself the same, whoever you're with. You don't change yourself because you're sitting in front of the Queen. That's what he always said. You don't change yourself because you're sitting in front of the Queen or sitting next to the person who's helping you, you know, a family member. You're still the same. You're always the same. And that's how Zara was. No airs, no graces. She was just Zara.
There we are. That was the aunt of Zara Alina speaking there. Now, Boris Johnson has urged the Mayor of London to get a grip on the Met Police after it was revealed the force had been put on special measures due to systemic failures found by a watchdog. As well as a series of high-profile scandals, including the murder of Sarah Everard by serving police officer Wayne Couzens, the force was found to have flawed corruption procedures and a backlog of child abuse cases. Well, speaking on LBC today, the Prime Minister urged Sadiq Khan to tackle the Met's problems by setting targets and hiring the right candidate to lead it.
The City Hall has got to grip this thing. In the end, the Mayor of London, one of his jobs, one of his titles is he's the Commissioner for Police in London. And he should grip it. He has the responsibility.
Well, a spokesperson for Mr. Khan said the Mayor managed the Met Police through the devastating impacts of government austerity and added that Mr. Khan has been clear with Londoners about the scale of change required, but has faced opposition from the government at every step. COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week, according to latest data from the Office for National Statistics. 1 in 30 people in England and Wales are estimated to have the virus. However, the impact on hospitals remains limited. 2 subvariants of Omicron, called BA.4 and BA.5, are driving the new infections, which has seen 3 of the world's top male tennis players having to pull out of Wimbledon after testing positive this week. Now, London's tube stations have been closed for a total of 76 days over the past 3 years. That's according to new figures. The majority of the 272 stations in the capital were closed for reasons such as strikes, and many others were closed due to staff shortages, mostly due to COVID-19. Well, Sadiq Khan attributed the closures to an increase in the infrastructure incidents and customer-related incidents. Well, the closure incidents totaled 1,658 between January 2019 and April this year. Well, if the tube isn't running, one way to get around is by cycling. However, according to new data, the government's Cycle to Work scheme is not working for Londoners. The scheme allows users to pay for a bicycle in instalments taken from their salary on a tax-free basis. However, people earning minimum wage, the self-employed, or those who do not pay tax on a salaried basis cannot currently access the benefits. The data shows there were less than 250 approved applications to the scheme in London in the past 5 years. Well, Labour's London Assembly Transport spokesperson Ellie Baker said it shows the outdated scheme, which was introduced in 1999, is no longer fit for purpose and needs wholesale reform to boost affordable, healthy and greener travel options for Londoners. Now, police are appealing for information following the theft of a sentimental item from a car in Regent's Park. Today, this image was released of a locket similar to the one stolen, which contains the ashes of the victim's baby. Other items, including camera equipment, were also stolen from a BMW on Tuesday last week between 12:30 and 1:30 p.m. The victim had parked her car while attending an event in Marylebone Green between Chester Road and the Outer Circle. Well, police have asked anyone with information to come forward and have appealed directly to the person responsible to return the locket. Right, let's take a quick look at sport now. And former boxing world champion Anthony Joshua finally has a date for his rematch against Alexander Usyk. The heavyweight boxer lost his world titles to the Ukrainian last year and will be looking to get his title belts back on the 20th of August in Saudi Arabia. Well, Joshua has first-hand experience of coming up against Usyk, but knows he'll have to be switched on in the ring to reclaim his world titles.
12 rounds in the bank is good. Good footage to watch, but every fight's different. I love boxing, I watch boxing, but until you're in there in front of someone, no matter how many videos you've watched, no matter how many stare downs you've had, no matter how many press conferences you've done, it's just completely different in the ring. So 12 rounds is good, don't get me wrong, but it's gonna be completely different when that first bell rings, if I'm honest with you. So you can't take too much away from it. You just gotta be in the moment. What happened then is in the past. I don't really live in the past, I'm just like present. So August 20th, I'll be present and I'll be looking forward to competing round by round. And if I follow my A, Bs and Cs, it should lead me to KO.
Well, that fight is on the 20th of August. Right, time for a check on the weather now. It's a clear night this evening with lows overnight of around 14 degrees. And we'll have a sunny start to the weekend tomorrow morning, but your Saturday will be mostly cloudy with highs just getting into the 20s. Sunday, we should have some more sun to round off the weekend, but there is a chance of showers in the afternoon. And the start of next week looks more of the same, staying in the low 20s. Well, just before the break, let's take a quick look ahead to tomorrow's Pride in London event. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to descend on the capital on Saturday for the Pride Parade, which organisers say will feature more than 30,000 participants from all sections of the community. The parade will pay homage to the 1972 march, passing significant sites from the UK's first LGBT+ movement 50 years ago. Time for a break now, but when we come back, Rugby World Cup winner Lawrence Dallaglio has walked 18 miles along the River Thames to raise money for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution after losing his sister over 30 years ago in the Marchioness disaster. We'll be speaking to him about the cause close to his heart after the break.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Now it's time to take a look at the world of politics in the week in Westminster with John Johnston from Politics Home. John joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the most recent news that the Conservative whip Chris Pincher has resigned from government. Just tell us what happened.
He resigned as the deputy whip because, in his words, he'd gotten drunk and embarrassed himself. There was allegations of groping made against him. And that it was another whip who reported him.
So would you say that this is a significant resignation and that there will be repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, this is someone who's quite close to Boris Johnson, but also, anytime anyone in charge of party discipline kind of has to go in this way, it looks really bad. And this is just one of many scandals we've had in recent weeks. It feels like genuinely at the moment it's hard to go a week without one. So I think all of this is building up pressure on the government, and a lot of people looking at Boris Johnson and questioning his leadership as to why this man is still an MP at the moment, why he's still a Conservative MP. So I think again it's a very bad look for the party, and it's also increasingly making Boris Johnson look a bit weak.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on now a bit further afield. Boris Johnson has been in Ukraine and Rwanda recently, and yesterday he committed Britain to increasing defence spendings.
Yeah, I think this is where he feels like he's strongest at the moment on defence and on Ukraine. So as you said, he's committed to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. We've also had this announcement that a further £1 billion in military aid and aid is going to be supplied to Ukraine. So, these are big announcements, big sums of money. I think this is something that many in his party have been pushing for. But again, it's a very difficult time to do this because a lot of people back home are saying, well, should we really be spending all this money when we have so many problems here with inflation and the cost of living? So quite a delicate line he's had to tread. But I think overall, something that's come or gone across quite well, especially within his own party.
Well, I was going to say, what has the reaction been not only within the Conservative Party, but also from the opposition? Do people feel it's a good idea, or do they feel it's a bit too little too late?
I think if you look at the response especially from the Ukrainians, they are really portraying the UK as having led the way on this, especially out of other NATO nations as well, and G7. They really see that the UK has gone above and beyond. And there's obviously a kind of relationship there with President Zelensky and Boris Johnson as well. So, this is something I think the party feels strong on. It's something Boris Johnson feels strong on, but it is a difficult one given the kind of wider context of a kind of more troubled economy back here in the UK.
Absolutely. Well, John Johnston, thank you so much for joining us here on London Live News. That was John Johnston with a roundup of the week in Westminster. Now, moving on, Rugby World Cup winner Lawrence Dallaglio has walked 18 miles along the River Thames in support of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. The former Wasps player trekked from Woods Quay in Westminster to Teddington to mark 20 years since the RNLI started having a life-saving presence on the Thames. Well, the stations at Tower, Chiswick, Teddington and Gravesend were opened in 2002 as a result of an inquiry into the Marchioness disaster in 1989. That claimed the lives of 51 people, including Lawrence's sister, Francesca. Well, I spoke to him a little earlier, just after he finished the walk.
I'm feeling surprisingly well, actually. We've been walking since about 7:30 this morning from Waterloo, and obviously, I found out about this walk a couple of weeks ago, and once I understood, what it was all about, the RNLI, the cause, obviously my own personal engagement and involvement, I was all in really. So very excited to be part of the challenge and to really raise awareness for some amazing people that do an amazing job that save lives. The RNLI, I'm sure people are aware of the incredible job that they do. They're all volunteers. They all have their own careers that they get on with, and then in their spare time, they give up their time to save other people's lives. And it's a very special job.
Absolutely. Well, this year, marks 20 years of the RNLI being on the Thames. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more. You mentioned there your own personal story.
Yeah. Well, I lost my sister very tragically in the Marchioness riverboat disaster in 1989 when the Marchioness was hit by the Bow Bell, a dredger, and tragically, 51 people died that evening. And I think, unfortunately, it took a long time to understand the truth of what happened that night, but there was no public inquiry, a bit like Hillsborough, really, for the first 6 years. But my mother, Eileen, along with a number of other people, understandably, were driven by grief and wanting to find out justice. And one of the things they did was to make sure that no other families had to ever wake up with that feeling of losing a loved one because they drowned on the river. So the RNLI didn't exist on the River Thames when the Marchioness went down. I think the rescue boats that were there were sent in the wrong direction. So my mother and a number of others, Eileen, campaigned really, really hard, and now there are 4 RNLI life stations across the Thames. It's a beautiful stretch of water, but it's also very dangerous, and these are volunteers that are called out literally hundreds of times each year, and they save lives. And I think, if anything good can come out of a tragedy like the Marchioness, then I think the legacy of having the RNLI on the Thames saving lives is a really good one. And, the reason for the walk is to really raise money for the charity. They're not they don't get funding, so it has to be done through events, through fundraising. And today was a raising awareness and raising much needed funds. And as I said, my mother would have been very proud of us today. She'd have joined us. Her and I launched an RNLI lifeboat called Legacy a number of years ago in memory of those that lost their lives on that night. And I feel a bit emotional actually being back by the river today.
Absolutely. It's obviously an event that's so close to your heart, this walk. How do you feel when you see, the RNLI and how the rescue service has evolved over the years?
Well, it's hard to sort of think back and think that they weren't on the river before that. It's they are like the 4th emergency service. And my mother used to say, try and leave people and things in a better place than when you arrived. And I think, as I said, having their presence there on the water, I think gives people peace of mind and knows that if they're needed, that they will be there. So, we started this morning in Waterloo and we walked all the way along the river. We're finishing here in Chiswick, and then we go on to Teddington as well. So, it's been a fascinating journey, really, and one that's brought, as you can imagine, all sorts of memories. Absolutely.
And how many miles is that you've walked then today?
Well, I don't like to think of it in those terms. It's I think it would be about 17 miles in total, but when you're walking and talking, it seems to pass by very quickly.
Absolutely. And the money raised from this event then, what will that go towards?
Well, the 4 life stations on the River Thames are the 4 busiest RNL life stations across the whole country, and that tells you exactly how much traffic is coming up and down the river, and obviously how important they are. So the money raised will go to the money raised will go to continually funding those stations, those volunteers, those support staff, and make sure that that legacy that we created 20 years ago is here in another 20 years' time.
Absolutely. Well, finally, it's obviously a very important cause, and I wonder what your hopes are as you look towards the future. As you mentioned, the RNLI relies mostly on donations. Do you just hope that continues to grow?
Well, I think that, listen, we need to make the city and the people of London and anywhere on the water feel as safe as possible. I can only speak from my own experience. One evening I was sat around a dinner table with my sister. The following day, she was gone. And I think that had the RNLI been on the River Thames that night, then I don't think 51 people would have died. So, listen, as I said, it's a life-changing, organisation, really, because it means that no other families have to go through the sort of things that we have to. So, I think hopefully we will continue to make the water safer and safer, and make sure that the RNLI is here in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
There we are, that was Lawrence Dallaglio after his 18-mile walk along the River Thames. Well, you're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia, a reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, the resident love expert from Celebs Go Dating joins us to talk about handling money in relationships. We'll be speaking to Anna Williamson after the break.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of some of the stories affecting Londoners today. A man accused of murdering Zara Alina in a street attack in East London has appeared today at the Old Bailey. 35-year-old Alina was walking in Cranbrook Road in Ilford, near where she lived, when she was attacked in the early hours of Sunday. A post-mortem examination revealed she had multiple serious injuries. Jordan McSweeney from Dagenham did not enter a plea to the charge of murder in court today. Well, he is also charged with attempted penetration without consent and robbery. Zara Alina's family said the aspiring solicitor was at a point in her life where her joy was radiating and blossoming. Alina's aunt, Farah Naz, spoke today, remembering her independent and kind niece, saying that she felt safe in Ilford and often walked around the community with her mother.
They would walk through Valentine's Park. They would walk up Cranbrook Road. That was their road to keep fit. It was well lit, and that's where they walked. And also because she knows those streets. It's a home. She knows the entire community between these two houses, the whole area. She sees that as her home. She knew everybody. If you're walking through your home, you are not going to expect to be hurt, to be brutalized, are you? Because she knew everybody. Hundreds of people that have come to our house, that have called us, that have sent us letters saying, you don't know me, but we knew Zara. You don't know me, we knew Zara. We had so many conversations. She was kind, and I'm going to say dutiful, but that didn't restrict the fact that she was fierce as well. She would speak up. If she didn't agree with you, she would say it. She wasn't afraid. And that's how perhaps she differed to the rest of us. She had that independent spirit, physically, emotionally, intellectually. She didn't care who you were. And my brother used to say to her, you know, the way that we talk to people, the way that we conduct ourselves, you conduct yourself the same, whoever you're with. You don't change yourself because you're sitting in front of the Queen. That's what he always said. You don't change yourself because you're sitting in front of the Queen or sitting next to the person who's helping you, you know, a family member. You're still the same. You're always the same. And that's how Zara was. No airs, no graces. She was just Zara.
There we are. That was the aunt of Zara Alina speaking there. Now, Boris Johnson has urged the Mayor of London to get a grip on the Met Police after it was revealed the force had been put on special measures due to systemic failures found by a watchdog. As well as a series of high-profile scandals, including the murder of Sarah Everard by serving police officer Wayne Couzens, the force was found to have flawed corruption procedures and a backlog of child abuse cases. Well, speaking on LBC today, the Prime Minister urged Sadiq Khan to tackle the Met's problems by setting targets and hiring the right candidate to lead it.
The City Hall has got to grip this thing. In the end, the Mayor of London, one of his jobs, one of his titles, is he's the Commissioner for Police in London. And he should grip it. He has the responsibility.
Well, a spokesperson for Mr. Khan said the Mayor managed the Met Police through the devastating impacts of government austerity and added that Mr. Khan has been clear with Londoners about the scale of change required, but has faced opposition from the government at every step. COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week, according to latest data from the Office for National Statistics. 1 in 30 people in England and Wales are estimated to have the virus. However, the impact on hospitals remains limited. 2 subvariants of Omicron, called BA.4 and BA.5, are driving the new infections, which has seen 3 of the world's top male tennis players having to pull out of Wimbledon after testing positive this week. Now, whether you're in a relationship or single searching through the dating apps, we have an expert on hand for some very important tips, particularly when it comes to money and love. A new survey has revealed that over a fifth of adults coupled up revealed their salary to their partner after a year or more of dating. And a third admit they also keep day-to-day information about their money situation stum. Well, James spoke about this and more with Anna Williamson, presenter and dating agent from the TV series Celebs Go Dating.
A lot of this research is incredibly interesting and just makes me extremely passionate, as you can probably tell, James, in wanting to let couples know that it is so important we talk about our finances, because money in relationships, it is one of the #1 reasons of couple breakdown.
What do you make of all that then? I mean, why do you think people are doing that and keeping their finances from each other? Is it embarrassment, or is it not wanting them to know how much they earn, perhaps? What do you think the reasons are?
Often it can come from stigma, and it can come from learned behaviour and what's gone on before that relationship. And if we take our upbringing, a lot of us, if we sit right now and think about our upbringing and our influences and our financial role models, what was your money situation like when you were growing up? Was it plentiful? Was it hard? Was there issues around debt? All of those kind of habits and that learned behaviour and those attitudes we can take from our childhood, and then we can bring them bang up to date into our adult life as well. And now let's also put into the equation other relationships that we may have had. A lot of people can get a bit burned in previous relationships. Perhaps there's been some issue around money or debt or control or embarrassment. And there is a learned behaviour also that's playing in, where a certain bit of attitude has come in. Well, I'm not doing that again, or I am going to do that again, or that didn't work that time, so I want it to work this time. So what it comes down to really in a relationship with finances is compromise and honesty and openness, and not being afraid to have that conversation with your partner, to sit down and say, look, things between us, they're going pretty good right now, but actually a huge part of being in a relationship is financial management. It dictates everything we do. Date nights, what we eat, where we live, what we can afford to do. So we must make it an important part and normalise it of day-to-day conversation.
Yeah. Do you think the tension comes from, often it comes to splitting the bill, or it comes to, how are we going to pay for this holiday or whatever, and the person is reticent to say, well, actually, I've got a feeling you might be on this, so I think I should be paying a bit less, but we don't, and then we keep it, in all relationships, the fault lines are often with not communicating with each other well enough. And is this perhaps one of the biggest ones?
Yeah, I was exactly going to say that. It's effective communication. And you can have these conversations in a way that perhaps feels a bit more relaxed, less accusatory. Because the minute we start going, into an awkward situation of, well, you're being secretive, why don't you tell me? Straight away, we're defensive. So, you know what? It's a little bit of push-pull. You give a little bit of information and you be vulnerable about your financial situation or your financial attitudes. Guess what? Your partner will come back at you and hopefully mirror and match you with theirs. So it's really important that you sit down and say, look, and do you know what? Often it's just confronting that elephant and going, this feels a bit awkward. It's not something I'm used to doing, but it is important because we insert issue of financial, we're saving for a holiday. But it's important we talk about it because I don't know whether I'm expecting too much from you financially or too little from you or vice versa. And it feels very confusing. And the thing is, when we start to really hold back on anything in our relationship, that is where the wheels start to come unstuck, because you think, well, if they're being secretive about that, I don't really know them, what else could they perhaps be hiding? And I'm not saying that in a sinister way, but the more honest and open and transparent we are in a relationship about everything, the more strong that relationship will be. And financial communication, as we know from our research for Capital One, it's pretty lacking, and we need to improve this in the UK.
Well, it's something perhaps a lot of the celebs might not be lacking in your programme.
I want to be in love.
I need to be treated like a princess. I want to be the first ever Celebs Go Dating wedding.
Oh!
What?
Tell us a little bit about that. As an expert, we've got you here. What do you make of the dating scene at the moment, particularly in London for our viewership? Because it's where it's most intense often, and there is so much going on, and particularly in the last sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 years even. It's changed so much. Tell us a bit about what you make of it all. Are you positive? Are you cynical about the way things are happening nowadays? And particularly with the pandemic that's really affected single people quite a lot. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'm always positive about love, and I'm always positive about dating. But you're right, we've taken an enormous hit in dating and relationships due to the pandemic. The facts are the facts that the majority of dating now and introductions and meeting people is done online. That's okay, but it's not for everybody. So it isn't the only way to meet people. But what I say to people now when it comes to dating is we live in a very fast-paced culture now, a swipe left, swipe right. It's like a supermarket, isn't it? And I think we're placing very high expectations on sort of surface level. And I think we are looking often for perfectionism in people. And because there's so much choice now, if someone doesn't tick all the boxes straight away, there is that ability to just go, I'll move on, I'll see with someone else, without really investing in that person to find out actually where are the layers. Okay, if there's enough of an attraction there and enough that's grabbed you initially, keep going with it. Give that second date, third date, fourth date, if there is something burning away. And I think this is what we're really seeing as the trend, is this sort of supermarket, next. And I would argue that too many people are looking for perfection. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship.
Yeah. When it comes to those expectations people have, as you say, the bar being a bit too high, do you think social media is at fault for that, and just the way things are nowadays in terms of the way we look at celebrities, Instagrammers, sort of influencers, those sort of people, and it's really damaging the way normal people are looking at each other when they come to dating?
It definitely has an impact, yes. And a lot of my job is telling people, particularly the younger generation, there's a filter. There's a filter. Look beyond that filter. And what I would say, it's not necessarily celebrities' fault, but it's for people to remember that this is a business for celebrities. That selfie that they've posted in the bikini, that's taken them probably 30 attempts with a professional team that have been trying to get that photo. That relationship you're seeing played out on social media, it might seem perfect, but trust me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Hey, maybe it is, but if you see the Kardashians and all of this, what we need to start doing is not measuring ourselves against celebrities that we see on social media, and follow people that are authentic.
There we go, all those tips and tricks from Anna Williamson there. Right, it's time for a final break now, but when we come back, the UK's longest running design graduate show returns to the capital after a 2-year absence. And we've been down to the Business Design Centre to take a look. See you soon.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. Now, the UK's longest-running design graduate show returns to the capital after a 2-year absence. New Designers displays some of the best works from aspiring graduates, with businesses and headhunters attending every year. Well, the show runs until the 9th of July at the Business Design Centre, and Henry has been speaking to the event director.
This is our 37th year, so we're very well established, and each year at this time of year we give a platform for these graduates to kind of have their first test, really to sort of display their work, connect with the industry and take their first step really into a kind of a career in the design world. Obviously, for the last 2 years, things have been very difficult, and the graduates of 2020 and 21 haven't had that opportunity. So we had to sort of pivot, as many events had to do, and they went online. So we still provided that kind of vital connection between themselves and the industry, albeit in a kind of slightly different way. So this year is the first time sort of in a few years that we're back in a real life event, which is just amazing. So we're really thrilled to kind of be open once again.
This is the longest running design graduate show in the UK. So what is the route for some of these former students from this point on? Because I assume maybe some have already gone into work or the industry in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, so I mean, the event very much exists to introduce them to potential recruiters, collaborators, press, and give them that first step really that they need to kind of go into the world. So, people who have who once were graduates with us are now coming back with their own businesses, for example, and kind of doing their own recruiting and looking for the next talent to join to their businesses. We also then have a section called 1 Year In, which is especially kind of pertinent this year, I think, because we've seen the last few years these young people take quite risky moves and not follow the traditional career path, but actually set up their own business. And so we have a section of the show called 1 Year In, where they are coming along to display, now that they are fully established in their own businesses, what they're doing now and what products they're now kind of on the market and available to purchase.
There are some noticeable themes in the show as well, aren't there? Works that are quite topical.
Yeah, I mean, every year we kind of see an emergence of different themes, and I think this year is really interesting. These graduates have had a really tough few years. It hasn't been the normal university experience. And I think for this industry in particular, because it is such a hands-on kind of tactile industry, if you like, they've been learning largely online for a large portion of their degree. So it's been really tough for them. I think what we've seen from this cohort, there was a huge amount of resilience and determination, and they seem like a really kind of go-getting group of young people. And the themes that are coming out, I think, are kind of indicative of really how hard it's been. So we have a lot around mental health and well-being. So a lot of the students have kind of used their experiences and kind of used their creativity and put that into practice, really kind of delivering some amazing products that are now on show. And I think Likewise, sustainability is a really big issue for us all, but I think especially for the kind of younger cohorts who are especially kind of worried about the future. So I think that's kind of coming out as a key theme. And also identity, how do we identify ourselves, especially in the last few years, kind of where we have been quite insular. That is a really big thing that we're seeing this year as well.
I think when people think of a design show, there's different ideas of what there is. Can you give some examples of some of the things that are on show for people to see?
Yeah, so we have so many disciplines to cover that we run across 2 weeks. So this first week covers disciplines such as jewellery, glassware, ceramics, textiles and fashion. And then next week we we shut down and then we reopen, and we have a second cohort of graduates coming in. And next week we cover disciplines such as furniture, product and industrial spatial design, and a lot of visual communication, so animation, graphic design, etc. So we do cover all of the disciplines, and there's a lot of work to be seen, really. So it's a lot to pick from.
And are these works for sale, or are they for the person who's made them forever?
No, not quite yet. So they would be essentially the work that the graduates have done as their final piece of work for their degree. So that's kind of what they're chosen to show at the event. They would then be headhunted by a lead designer from John Lewis, for example, who is looking kind of for the next new talent. And the hope is that they would then be recruited to work in-house for their design team. Some people in the past have had sort of their designs commissioned, and they are now in store. So that's hugely exciting. But in terms of what's on sale, that would generally be covered by our 1 year in program. So that's the kind of the new businesses that have launched in the last couple of years. They are now kind of available to purchase, which is really exciting.
You talk about the headhunters coming. This is a great opportunity, isn't it, for these graduates?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We've got a really now prestigious, well thought of awards program called ND Awards. And we have seen such support this year from the industry. So we've got, sponsors such as John Lewis, Hallmark, Liberty. Their prizes, so they pick a winner from all of the graduates on the show, and some of the prizes that they offer are just absolutely life-changing. They could get a year's paid internship, for example, which it changes their life. So it's really amazing, the opportunities that are available to them.
There we go. New Designers is on at the Business Design Centre until the 9th of July. Now, a new thriller about life after war is arriving on stage in the capital this evening. Written by Bill Kane, the play puts the spotlight on the real-life experience of a US Army private accused of war crimes. 9 Circles is opening at the Park Theatre in North London, and Maddie has been speaking to the cast.
Does that work for you?
What? Does what work for me?
That act, because it will not work in your trial.
Under the right circumstances, anyone is capable of terrible.
It tells the real-life story of Stephen Dale Green and the conflict in the Iraq War and his trial through the American justice system.
What do you intend for this play to represent?
The presenting issue explored is a war crime, and although the play explores the crime and punishment, it also sort of explores love, bravery, and the heroism soldiers experience during war. I play the role of Daniel Edward Reeves, who the story is based off on, and the idea is sort of humanity expressed through an unlikely individual, and that's sort of what really drew me to the role. Daniel is a soldier who is diagnosed with a personality disorder and on trial for these serious war crimes. And sort of as he descends through the 9 circles of hell, because it's sort of mixed with this Dante's Inferno idea, he sort of faces many different lawyers and a shrink and a pastor, each of whom sort of peel a layer away from him, sort of leaving him stripped and ultimately facing his true self. And that's the play, and that's sort of what drew me to the character.
And how has the rehearsal process been?
Good question. I sort of played another iteration of this character in a play by Sandy Toksvig, Bully Boy, in Colchester. Exploring a sort of similar theme of a soldier committing a war crime, and so we had people come in from the army, because that was in Colchester, so there was a military base there. So we had people come in to sort of get us into the mindset of a soldier. And the same in America when we did it off Broadway. We had people come in just to sort of help us feel, you know, what do the uniforms mean? What do the regalia mean? What is it to stand at attention? Yeah, so we had a lot of help from a lot of different people.
And so this comes out mid-July. What response are you looking to receive from your audience members?
I mean, it's a really sensitive play and a really sensitive subject, so I'm expecting people to have mixed feelings, but hopefully to come away with a bit of perspective. You know, it's so easy to sort of take one side during a war, especially if you're fighting in it or if you know people who are fighting in it or who are dying in it. So it's very hard to comment on as myself. But from the point of view from the play, you know, a lot of the times these are very young men and women who are being asked to do things that their leaders are telling them to do, and if they don't do them, they get court-martialed or killed. So a lot of really unexpected things can happen during conflict, and I think maybe just some sort of an idea of perspective on that, really, especially as these young men go on trial. Yes, they need to be punished. Yes, they're going to go to jail. Yes, they might die, but also maybe a sense of sympathy, a smidge of sympathy. I don't condone a lot of it. I don't. A lot of the violence, a lot of the war crimes, but there is a bigger picture behind these soldiers who become the face of these crimes. You know, Bush during the administration in Iraq, Putin right now during the conflict in Ukraine. He's asking a hell of a lot for these young men and women, and they're the ones who are going to get the blame.
There we go. That play, 9 Circles, is on until the 23rd of July at the Park Theatre. Let's just have another look at the weather before we go. It's a clear night this evening with lows overnight of around 14 degrees. And we have a sunny start to the weekend tomorrow morning, but your Saturday will be mostly cloudy with highs just getting into the low 20s. Sunday, we should have some more sun to round off the weekend, but there is a chance of showers in the afternoon. And the start of next week looks more of the same, staying in the low 20s. Right, that's all from us this evening, and we'll be back in the morning with London's Weekend, a look back at some of the main talking points from across the capital this week. You can also keep up to date by following us on social media at London Live. Have a great weekend.